The Springbok and the Reindeers, a Christmas story from Africa. Written and read by Andrea Florens. On a clear moonlit night on the dry and dusty plains of Africa, a baby springbok was born. Now, this was no ordinary night. On this night, the stars polished their golden garments especially hard, so that they shone a little brighter. The moon ate an extra dollop of cheerful with his dinner, and felt particularly jovial. And all the African creatures on the land were exceptionally loving and joyous, for indeed, this was no ordinary night. This was the eve before Christmas. The mother springbok licked her tiny new bundle. What a handsome little fellow he is, she thought, as he slowly opened his big brown eyes. And, looking up at his proud mother, the baby springbok gave his first smile. But what was that? Over her shoulder, and high up in the sky, he spied a procession that filled the newborn antelope with wonder.
There, amongst hundreds of dazzling lights, were 2 rows of animals, not unlike him and his mother, pulling a big sparkling sleigh that seated an enormously fat man with a crystal white beard and a coat of red. What the little springbok could or could not have understood of this scene in his first few moments of birth is unclear, but he watched with such unblinking fascination as the procession slowly crossed the sky that his mother knew that this memory would hold a very special place in his heart. And she was right. As soon as Springbok was old enough to talk, he questioned his family about the wondrous procession he had seen on the night of his birth. They explained to him about a special birthday that thousands of people celebrated all over the world. This birthday was called Christmas, and on this day, everyone gave each other gifts. But the most important person to give out gifts was Father Christmas. He was the old bearded man with the red coat sitting in the sleigh, described his mother. And what about the animals pulling the sleigh? He inquired. Those are Father Christmas's helpers, explained his dad. They are called reindeer, and they are remarkable creatures. They're strong, and they're brave, and they're clever. But most of all, they are magic, because they fly without wings. It was not long after that little Springbok celebrated his first birthday, and on that night all the Springboks gathered together to see Father Christmas and his reindeer-drawn sleigh. When the spectacular procession appeared in the night sky, the other Springboks oohed and ahed and jumped with joy. But little Springbok fell quite silent, and with his big brown eyes he watched every movement as the glittering sleigh, Father Christmas and the strong, brave, clever and magic reindeers flew across the sky, until they finally disappeared from sight. From that day onwards, little Springbok was infatuated by the Christmas procession, but more importantly, he became stubbornly preoccupied by the reindeers. It was almost all he could talk about. One day, he told the other Springboks, I'm going to be just like those reindeers. I'm going to be strong and brave and clever and magic, he would say. And one day I will help Father Christmas pull his glittering sleigh across the skies. And because he was still young, the other Springboks did not dampen his spirit,
but kindly encouraged him to follow his fantastical dream.
The years went by, and each and every day Springbok worked hard at becoming strong. He would spend hours running and jumping, springing high in the air, much higher than all the other Springboks on the plain. Springbok also learned to be very brave. It was he who would pretend to be the slowest when the lions came to eat, luring them in the opposite direction to his friends, and then sprinting off as fast as lightning until the lions could no longer chase him. Springbok also made sure he became as clever as he could be. He learned all he could about the way of the wild in Africa. He learned to understand the delicate balance of nature and was always mindful of the other African animals, insects and plants that shared his world. The only thing that made young Springbok sad was that he could not work hard at being magic. Try as he might, he could not fly, even when leaping from a very high rock. His disappointment was clear to the other Springboks. Some of the envious ones would jeer and laugh. "You'll never be a reindeer. You're an ordinary Springbok, just like us." His mother and father were so disheartened to see him unhappy. "Give up on your dream to be magic, little darling. It's just not realistic. Remember, though, that you are the strongest and the bravest and the cleverest of all the Springboks. We are so proud of you," they would say, trying to cheer him up. But Springbok would not let go of his dream, no matter how impossible it seemed. Every year on his birthday, he would wait with anticipation to see the first glimpse of the Christmas procession in the sky. "One day I'll find that magic," he would whisper quietly to himself. "One day I'll be up there with Father Christmas and the reindeers." It was on his 10th birthday, when all the Springboks were gathered under the silver moonlight and the shimmering stars, awaiting the Christmas procession, that things happened a little differently to the years before. This night, the procession did not appear at the usual time. In fact, after a few hours, the moon started yawning, the stars became awfully fidgety, and all the animals in the veld began to whisper worriedly amongst themselves. "Where is the Christmas procession? Why are Father Christmas and his reindeers so late? Perhaps he's not coming this year at all." But just as the animals had decided they'd go home to bed, the shimmering lights appeared slowly from the north. The animals were all very excited, but none more so than Springbok. He could not contain his joy, leaping hundreds of meters high into the air and whooping with sheer delight. His display was so remarkable that all the other animals were captivated by the young Springbok. And unbeknown to all of them, Springbok had captured the attention of someone else, none other than Father Christmas, who turned his sleigh towards the veld and proceeded to instruct his reindeers to come down to land, right next to the Springboks. A hush fell over the creatures of the African veld. The reindeers panted heavily as they came to a halt, and, magnificent as these antelope were, they all looked exhausted. The African animals stared in awe as the rotund old man, with his frosty white beard and bright red coat, descended his sparkling sleigh. He purposefully walked towards young Springbok, and placing a gentle hand on his head, he announced, "Young Springbok, you look strong and brave and clever. My leading reindeer fell ill tonight, and we've tried to make our journey without him. But at this slow rate, we'll never finish delivering all our gifts before Christmas. You are just the antelope I need to take his place."
All the animals gasped, but Springbok spoke out bravely. "Father Christmas, I have worked all my life to become strong, brave, and clever, just like your reindeers. For it is my biggest dream to help you pull your sleigh through the skies on Christmas Eve. But sadly, I have not yet found the magic I'll need to be able to fly." And with a heavy sigh, Springbok hung his head at the old man's feet. Father Christmas gently lifted Springbok's face towards his and chuckled softly. "Dear Springbok, I have just the thing." And with that, he reached into his pocket and brought out a small red velvet bag. "I have a little magic, and believe me, you have some magic inside your heart. We'll put our magic together, and you will be able to fly just as well as any of my reindeers." And with that, he sprinkled a fine golden dust on Springbok's head. Then together they walked towards the reindeers, and Father Christmas harnessed him at the lead. "You'll know exactly what to do, my clever fellow," he said. Then climbing back into his sleigh, he bellowed, "Onward ho!" And all the reindeers and Springbok lifted up into the air. "He'll be back before sunrise," boomed Father Christmas to all the other Springboks. And just before they took off too high into the night sky, Springbok turned with the biggest and brightest of smiles and said, "I had some of the magic in me all along. See you in the morning." All the African animals watched in awe as Father Christmas and his sleigh, pulled by the reindeers and their very own Springbok, lifted into the night sky, and higher they flew, the Christmas procession glittering and sparkling like never before. The end. For more African folklore stories like this, visit AndreaFlorens.com.